Hello, I'm James Rice, one of the people who's been working for a few months now to try to reopen Filmhouse in Edinburgh. I'm actually up here on the roof. I came up here because just to see it. One of the things that's happened since the building was sold is that the owner, Caledonian Heritable, has put a lot of work and effort into repairing the roof and other parts of the building to make it properly wind and watertight in a way that it's not been for a little while. So I came up to have a wee look. This roof here, which you can see there, that's actually the roof to Cinema One. Lots of amazing things have happened in Cinema One that I can remember. Firstly, just being introduced to extraordinary films. I remember films and retrospectives at the festival or in the Filmhouse program, being introduced to Konnichiwa Chikawa, Valerio Zerlini, Clouzot, major filmmakers who, as a young person interested in cinema, I hadn't heard of at that point, and just feeling that I'd found really new, brilliant things. Amazing people have come through Filmhouse One as well. I mean, Martin Scorsese was there years ago, and Thelma Schoonmaker. I saw Jack Cardiff introduce Black Narcissus. More recently, I remember Meg Ryan in the back corridor waiting to get in, and there was Kevin Bacon was there, and we had an amazing show of Crispin Glover showing his film, and he sat behind the curtain, behind the screen somehow for some reason during his screening, which was interesting and a bit unusual. Maggie Cheung, the great Maggie Cheung, was there as part of Mark Cousins' brilliant Cinema China project a while back, and I saw the RZA in there from the Wu-Tang Clan. He was there to introduce Ghost Dog by Jim Jarmusch. I still can't quite believe that happened, but it did, and I was there to see it. And apart from these, there's lots of live music happened there as well. I remember Filmhouse always did a lot of silent cinemas, so there was a screening I remember of this huge Italian epic, The Last Days of Pompeii. It's about 4 hours long, and it's about the last days of Pompeii. And the pianist, Forrester Pike, we had in to do the live music. We hadn't been able to give him a way to see the film in advance or prepare, so he just improvised an entire score for 4 hours for this huge magisterial piece of silent cinema. And everyone loved it. I mean, there was applause at the end and everything. And I went up afterwards to thank him, and his fingers were bleeding. And he said, "James, my fingers are bleeding." And he was just grinning ear to ear. He couldn't imagine him happier. Lots of other things like that. And more than these, even more than these, kind of unique one-off opportunities to see things or experiences. I remember just day after day, people of all kinds, from all walks of life, going in to enjoy the best new cinema on release, and that being part of what they did. So in Cinema One, we want to obviously reopen Filmhouse and do it in the best way we can. I think to make it appealing to as many people as possible, we need to get new seats in. The ones in there are torn. The stuffing's coming out. You can't even buy seats that small anymore. It needs to be a bit more comfortable, because otherwise it really sticks out. It's not being up to scratch, not comfortable enough for people. We don't want to let the films down, let the audiences down by having the environment not be what it can be for their to have a good experience of the film. So we want to do some acoustic work in there as well, just to improve the viewing conditions. So underneath Cinema One is the foyer where the box office is, and the cafe bar. I started here in 2001 in box office. So that's obviously a focal point. And then the cafe is the social center, the heart of the cinema in a way, where people go to have a bite to eat and more importantly perhaps a conversation about what they've seen, what they're going to see, and people learn from each other in there. I remember being on my very first box office shift in December 2001, and I was on my break, and I went for a coffee and a piece of Rocky Road in the cafe bar, and I sat there, and I had three things in my mind. I can remember this quite vividly. Thing one, I was glad to have a job. Thing two, I had no idea how to do that job. I learned later on. Thing three, I just sat there looking around, and the cafe bar was full of people, and it was kind of buzzing. And a few of them I recognized because I'd been coming to Filmhouse as a customer for a while already. But a lot of them I didn't. But everyone was there, and some looked serious and some looked merry. But everybody was there kind of for similar reasons, because they wanted to see something that was going to be, give them a new way of looking at the world around them. And I remember thinking to myself as I drank my coffee there, that I'd sort of landed in the right place, and that's been borne out after a long time. So in the cafe, we want to refresh that as well. It's really dated now. We want to refresh it. We'd love to shrink the box office to open it out and give a better sense of like space and light between the box office and the foyer, so that it becomes a really appealing place again for people to spend time. That time around the film is really important. I mean, the film is at the center, of course, but you know, we want people to talk to each other and spend time here and have a nice coffee, a piece of cake while they do that. So behind, you can't actually see it from where I've landed here, but there's another small roof behind the end of that roof, and that's the roof to Cinema 2. Cinema 2 was the original screen, the first one that opened back in 1979, and lots of films show in there. And again, like Filmhouse 1, you know, there's perhaps some of the slightly more adventurous specialist new release films go through there, and I've seen amazing things in there, and done a lot of projection in there, because I was a projectionist too early on, and a lot of my work in projection was in Filmhouse 2 showing films. For some reason, my whole memory of Filmhouse 2 is pinned to a particular shot in a particular film, and it's the last shot in a film called Landscape in the Mist by Theo Angelopoulos. We did an Angelopoulos retrospective at one point, and all these prints came in from Greece, and they're wonderful films. But the last shot of Landscape in the Mist is, well, to me it was amazing. It's basically, the film is about these two little kids, a brother and sister, and they're young, and they're sort of wandering on their own around Greece, trying to get to Germany to link up with, I think, their older brother, or their family. Anyway, they have these adventures, and they don't really get to Germany. But at the end, the last shot is just these two kids in the foreground in mist. That's it. No depth. Just two kids in mist, and then the mist clears, and the two kids. And what opens up is this long shot with depth and perspective of an open field and a tree in the distance on the skyline. And the two kids just set out through the grass in this field, and they wend their way through across the grass. And as they approach the tree, I don't know how Angelopoulos did this, but somehow the shot freezes into this just painting, into like a composed landscape painting. And it loses that sense of depth and perspective. So again, you're in this world of flatness, but it's a landscape. And it's hard to describe in words. Obviously, you need to see the film. But to me, this was just one of the most extraordinary examples of what cinema can do. So affecting at the end of this story, these two kids. I saw that shot in the audience because I went to see the film, and then at another screening, I saw it as a projectionist at the port, waiting for the tab queue coming through to close the screening off. And somehow Filmhouse 2 for me is linked to that shot. In Filmhouse 2, again, the seats really need done. They're falling to pieces, and we want to do other things, like we think it might be possible to do a level entry in there so that wheelchair users can just go in the same way as everyone else, rather than having an extra platform left to navigate, and acoustic treatment as well. And then if you can look, so that bit of roof you can see between the wall and the Cinema 1 roof, that's the roof of the back block, which has the offices, and under the office is Cinema 3. Cinema 3, I mean, for me, I remember some screenings which were very rare, alongside, again, all of the perhaps most specialist of the new release films coming through from all over the world. But really rare screenings. I mean, I saw Shot in Tango on 35mm there, Bela Tarr's huge, epic, engrossing 7.5-hour adaptation of Laszlo Krasznahorkai's novel. And I saw loads of films in the retrospective of the Ukrainian documentary filmmaker Alexander Dovzhenko, who started in the silent era and worked right through into the 1950s, I think. Those ones came in on from the archive in I think Kiev on 10-minute half reels, and they had to be done on changeovers because they were archival, and so the projection were really jumping back and forth to keep those films going, so people could see them. And I saw in there, I mean, another thing was Andy Warhol's Chelsea Girls, for example. I mean, that is just an extraordinary multi-projector 16mm split-screen art piece by Andy Warhol. You know, screenings like these are enormously rare. They're rare, not just in Edinburgh, they're rare anywhere, really. So that's an important thing that Filmhouse did, was to make these kinds of things available to people. And in Filmhouse 3, so again, we want to just refreshing it up. But alongside that, also we want to look at the acoustic protection, because we want to stop so much noise getting in from the corridors. All of these improvements we want to do are about trying to make the whole experience of visiting Filmhouse better and fresh and modern, so that people want to come in. We don't want any aspect of the building to be a deterrent for people who maybe aren't yet fully engaged with some of the really fantastic things that are showing here. We want to remove barriers and deterrents so that people can come in, and anybody can come in and enjoy it. And we think that getting the building into a better state, the whole will help that experience. It's not the whole answer, but it's part of the answer. Up above Cinema 3, again under those roofs there, are the offices, and the offices are where a lot of the work to kind of maintain the business, keep the business going, happened. And where a lot of the work happened to plan the program, do all the work to kind of get things in place so that the people in projection, front of house, box office, cafe can then deliver the films to the audiences, essentially. And I spent most of my time working here in those offices. I worked in program delivery, which basically means all the work that needs to be done to arrange for films to be screened to people. That includes a lot of different elements, but one of the important things is actually going and finding the films, both people who own them, so you can get permission, and also the actual film materials that are going to be the best ones to use to show the films. Filmhouse over the years screened prints from the great film archives of the world, BFI archive all the time, of course, but then the great film archives of Europe, the Cinematheque Française, Cinematheque Toulouse, the Eye Institute in Amsterdam, Deutsche Kinemathek, Austrian Film Museum, all these amazing European film archives which house the materials that are essentially are part of the history of film. North American archives as well, the really major ones, as well as some more specialist ones. But certainly we borrowed prints pretty regularly from UCLA, from Harvard, the Academy Film Archive, for example, and many others, and even farther afield sometimes. I mean, we've had prints in from Hong Kong, Taipei, Melbourne, and in order to be able to even to be considered for being able to borrow these materials, these rare, precious film materials, you've got to have some very particular technical capabilities, technical installation, and some very particular and carefully maintained skills and standards about how you handle these films. Filmhouse maintained and would in future maintain all of those skills and those capabilities to be able to screen these films, when they're the best way to show that particular film, or the only way. So yeah, that's the work that happened in the office. One thing that's been really striking for me since we launched our campaign a couple months ago is just the absolutely steady, consistent drumbeat of people who are approaching us, or talking to us, and saying how important Filmhouse has been in the past and how important it is to them that it comes back. And you can see some of this on the donor comments on the crowdfunder site. Wonderful comments, and you can see some of it on the supportive videos. So if you look at our website, there's some great videos from people who support Filmhouse and want to help us bring it back. And also the videos that people have been doing themselves on social media and so forth. But there's a lot more of it. People emailing us, people coming up to us in person and talking about this. And there are common themes that run through this. A lot of people say that they feel lost without Filmhouse there. One guy said that when Filmhouse shut, he felt like it was that one of his arms had been removed, and that was a bit extreme. But but the sentiment is the same, I think, as many other people who use slightly tamer language and just comment on the fact that they miss it terribly, and that there's nothing else in Edinburgh remotely approaching what Filmhouse delivered to the city. And that they want it back. And so to us, to me and Rod and Ginny and David, hearing all of this is highly motivating. There's a lot of work we have to do to try to get Filmhouse into a better future, and it's highly motivating to hear all of this from people. And also, as somebody who spent a long time working in this organization, doing my best to try to make Filmhouse as good as it could be for all the people who come through the doors. It's really rewarding to hear from people in a more direct way, perhaps, than I ever had before, that it mattered to them. I guess one of the reasons I'm making this video is that, I and the few of us who are kind of in the eye of the storm, as it were, at the moment, we're just a tiny, tiny fraction of the large family of people who've worked in this building and made Filmhouse what it was for so long, and who all I think mostly want it back. And I kind of want everyone who worked there, from the very beginning, from the late 1970s up to the moment of crisis last year, in every department, every role, projection, box office, kitchen, cafe, ushers, cleaners, management, finance, marketing, programming, education, the works. I want everyone to hear, I guess, what we're hearing about how much it mattered to people. Because I think that, all of that work, all of the work that we did, a lot of work, a lot of it unseen over all that time, it meant something, and it still means something, because by giving people a place where everyone can come and find something new and wonderful by exploring the language of film together, by being that place, Filmhouse has made a great many people's lives a little bit more joyful, a little bit more complete than they would have been otherwise. Film can do that, and it matters. And so we'll carry on doing the work that needs to be done now to open the doors.